What's up, guys? Knight here today. I got another review, and it's for Silksong. Yes, the game, after 7 years, has been released. It's been a couple weeks since it came out, and I want to talk about it. And a big reason why I want to talk about it is because I played the rest of the game off stream. I got up until the first ending of the game, and this is going to be like a relatively spoiler-free review, but I got to the first ending of the game on stream, and I was like, yeah, I'll play it more, and then I didn't play it more because I was really just enjoying laying back, sitting down off stream, playing the game, exploring, discovering things on my own, and I finally got the true, like, final ending. And I'm like, okay, I think it's now finally time to talk about my opinions. So I think the major thing for me is, does it live up to the hype of what it is? Silksong has been in development for what, it was like 7 years, and people were hyping it up to be the best thing ever, and I was too, because it was supposed to be showed off and released, and then it got delayed, or not delayed, but then it got ignored, or we got no information on it, and that happened for a long time, and people got upset, which is, like, fine. I think that's okay. And Team Cherry really didn't talk about it much because they were just chilling and enjoying the development of the game and didn't want to rush it out. There was a interview, I believe, that came out, like, as the game came out, talking about what they had to say, and they didn't have to really do anything. They didn't have to push it out because they didn't have a developer or a publisher being like, hey, you have to get it out at this deadline, so they just took their time and made the game the best it could be. And after getting the, like, true final ending, I do think the game is the best it could be. I was worried that when Silksong came out, or when it was said to be released in, like, 2 weeks after the final trailer was shown, I was like, okay, I'm very excited, it's finally here, but for some reason in the back of my mind, I was like, I really hope that it isn't just more of Hollow Knight. And by more of Hollow Knight, I mean more of the same thing. I want to get what we loved about Hollow Knight, but expanded on greatly in basically every aspect, like visuals, music, combat, story, whatever. Obviously, like, the combat is pretty much the most important part because it is a Metroidvania. And I think that's really hard for a lot of games and developers and movies and shows and just anything that it gets sequels, because a big part of why the first of a lot of things are so good or popular is because it has that first sense of exploration and discovery. But luckily, after getting the true, like, final ending the other day, I can confidently say that my expectations were thoroughly met in every single degree. Even the difficulty, which I know a lot of people don't like, and I have some good and bad opinions about the difficulty. But first things first, the atmosphere. You know, when you hop into a game, you're like, do I feel like I'm in this world? And as soon as I got into Silksong, when you land in Bone Bottom with the beautiful, vibrant visuals and greens, you feel, oh, you're like, oh my God. Neuron activations are going crazy. The music, the vibe is lovely. Just the like 10 billion layers of parallax that the world has throughout the whole game, throughout, like, the 20 different zones or whatever the number is in this game. You feel so immersed in everything. I think, honestly, every area feels so much larger than it actually is. One, because, like, the game is just huge. But there's, like, 20 layers of stuff going on. You have it's a 2D game, obviously. You have the ground you're walking on, right? You have the layers behind you, and then you have the layers in front of the camera. And so it's got to be, like I said, like 20, maybe even more, maybe even less, depending. So it feels like these zones are not only 2D, because that's what it is, but 3D, and also has a whole other axis of size. As soon as you start the game, you're in this incredibly vibrant green zone, and I wish that those colors kind of did translate more throughout the game. Majority of the game are, like, the darker grays and, like, some blacks and some, like, very, like, low, like, white gray kind of combinations, and, like, some golds, but they aren't so shiny. The areas are beautiful nonetheless, whether they're gray or not, but I did just really, really enjoy, like, Bone Bottom's green, even if it was for, like, 5 minutes, or Verdania, which I got, like, in the last 50 hours of the game, or, like, when I hit the 50-hour mark, I unlocked, which was crazy, and then Coral Tower, which is also, like, at the end of the game. But the vibrant blues and reds and greens in those zones are, like, so breathtaking that when I go to all the other places, like the Citadel, which is also beautiful because, like, the aesthetic there is so sick. Like, the gold and the castle, and it's so cool. And then, like, the Underworks is like a Bloodborne vibe, and you literally have, like, penis monsters. Shit is crazy. And, like, those are cool. But I loved the other zones for the colors, because I just love me some color. And, you know, this game has such, like, high resolution and just so many different assets and mobs and enemies and things that are going on, that when you go to those colorful zones, you're like, oh my God, this is bliss. You have like the nice music playing in the background, and you have the noise of the bugs moving, and then you have like Hornet making the jump noises and all these things, and you feel so immersed in this world. And then you leave and it's all gray and nasty, and you're like, oh my god, like I feel like Hornet. I want to save this kingdom or this city or this area, world, whatever, from this plague and from this darkness, because god damn, do I love the beautiful colors. And there's a lot of like really cool areas too that have some bright like whites that do with the story, which I won't go into, which is really, really cool. But they're so few and far between, sadly. And so before I go into other stuff, I'm going to go about the pros right now, then I'll go about the cons. So the pros about everything. Map size, number one. Map is absolutely giant. There are so many areas. In like my 55, 56, whatever hours in the game, I got an 80% completion by the end, and I pretty much did everything beside getting the rest of the items. I did almost all the quests. I got like all the heart upgrades. I got like all the weapon upgrades, and I did like the mini games and whatever. But the map is so giant that I was still finding a couple zones when I had 50 hours in the game, and I don't even think I found everything. I did have to look up a couple things here and there, which I think is part of me being stupid, but also because there's just such a vast variety of things to do. But it gave like the same feeling of when I played Elden Ring for the first time, and I think a lot of people played Elden Ring for the first time, and you go into like Limgrave or whatever the main zone is, and then you go into the castle, I think. It's been a long time, okay? And then you keep going, and then you're like, okay, like surely I'm kind of close to like the ending area, right? And then it opens to a whole new area, which is even bigger than the starting zone. And then you go through, and then you go in like the back with like Melania or whatever, whatever it is, man. And it's crazy. It's the same thing in this game where you're like, okay, it's really big, but then like, you know, oh, I found the Citadel. That's cool. And you're like, oh, wait, there's 1 or 2 zones to the left. Oh, wait, there's like 3 to the right. Oh, wait, there's more above me. Oh, hold up. We're not in Act 3 yet, which has basically a majority of the map, or a lot of the map, changed, along with more quests. It is crazy, and it makes sense why this game took so long. I thought it would take a while because they just, like, kept adding combat and wanted to make the visuals really nice, but no, it's just because they have a million different zones, and that's not a bad thing at all. That is absolutely one of the best parts about the game, because you keep finding things, and everything you find is cool and different, and there's so many enemies. There's like 230 plus enemies in the game, and bosses, which is an ass ton of enemies in any game at all, especially for a $20 Metroidvania like Silksong. But there's so much, and the combat too is so great, and that plays into the traversal and the size of the map. So the combat and the movement is absolutely a step up from Hollow Knight in like every aspect. They start out, Silksong, with Hornet having this crest. I forget the name of the crest, but it's the one where when you attack downwards, in Hollow Knight you just like pogo basically. But in this, Hornet does like this diagonal 45-degree slash to the left or the right, and it's kind of aggravating at first. I was like not happy at all, and I was like, dude, what about my like pogo? And the game forces you to learn the pogo on stuff with that diagonal downward attack, and gets you out of your comfort zone. And a lot of this game is about getting out of your comfort zone with the combat and the difficulty. Because as you play through and get to bosses, and then, you know, bosses later in the game, and then the final bosses and side bosses, everything will challenge you and try to make you use things that you're usually not comfortable with. Because for me, this game's difficulty it's one of the hardest games I think I've ever played. But I think it's one of the best, hardest games I've ever played. And the reason is because the challenge is mostly 98%, I guess we'll say, fair. That 2% I'll talk about in a little bit. But the 98%, it's fair because the challenge that is given to the player is to use what you have in the game and find more things. The hard part of the game when you fight enemies isn't just that they have, you know, fast moves, a high health pool, or whatever. It's you need to use items that you don't usually use, because if you don't, the boss fight will take twice as long, and it will be much more aggravating. You need to use the tools that they give you. They have shards to collect. You got to use the crest that you use, the silk abilities, all these things that if you don't put to use, it's basically like playing a Dark Souls game and you're not using anything other than just a sword and dodging. Obviously, a lot of people do that. I like to do that as well sometimes, but clearly, you got to use abilities or buffs and debuffs and all these things to make it a bit easier that will make it also more fun, because you're not going to be spending 3 to 4 hours on a boss, you'll probably spend maybe 1 to 2 hours on that boss. But even so, with all those things that the game gives you, you really got to rack your brain for some boss fights to be like, okay, this guy, he's on the floor a lot. This boss is on the ground a bunch. He's going left and right. Let me use the pins so that when he steps on the pins, he takes damage, and I can mix it with this thing that makes the enemies take poison damage. So when he's walking on the pins to take damage, he'll then take poison damage on the floor. And so basically, like, throughout the whole game, you got to do that. You have stuff to give you more health, you have stuff to make you quicker, you have stuff to give you more damage, and so even by the end of the game, when I had the highest amount of heart containers, I had them all maxed out, I had the highest amount of pin upgrades, and I was fighting like the true final boss and some other side quest bosses. Shout out Carmelita, she was absolutely insufferable. I was still getting my cheeks clapped, and that's because I was trying to speed through these boss fights and stick to the crest that I used throughout the whole game that I really enjoyed, instead of switching to something else. I was stubborn, and I was like, I don't want to use this thing because I'm not used to it, and even though it might be better, I like this thing, and I'm stubborn, and that's what it is. But then when I switched and I was patient and I was like, you know what, fuck it, let me just spend maybe 10 minutes learning this new thing instead of me already spending 3 hours on this boss on Carmelita and getting upset. And when I did that, oh my god, look, I beat the boss. It was much easier. Was it uncomfortable for me? And it's weird to say that because it's a video game. Yes, it was uncomfortable because I had to switch and I liked what I was good at, but this new thing was good for that different boss fight. And I think, once again, that's 98% of why this game is so challenging, but also why it's fair in that challenge, is because you have so many options and so many avenues to beat boss fights that if you're bad at one thing, you gotta try something else. And that's really hard for people, and even for me, when playing a lot of video games, because you're just not used to that. I'm gonna now go to the 2% difficulty, and this is what a lot of people are saying, is the run back and the location of benches. And so, okay, the 2%, the location of benches, as I mentioned. The first thing with the benches, so the game, you save at a bench. When you die, you don't spawn back in at like a cutscene or at like a zone. In most games like Skyrim or something, you'll walk through a door, and if you die, maybe you'll spawn like outside that door. But in Silksong, you respawn only at those bench locations. In a lot of areas in the game, I guess, let's just say if there's 20 zones, let's just say 17 of the zones, for example, 17 of those zones will have benches in all the right spaces. But there's the only couple other areas that there's a fast travel spot or a bench spot that is the only spot in that whole area, or one of the only two, and it takes so long to go from that bench to that boss fight, or that bench to that area. And so when you die, it will then make the run back to the boss, or the run back to wherever you got to go to get your items, just a little tedious and aggravating, in the sense where they tried to make it harder, but it comes off more as like an artificial difficulty. I think, like I said, this whole game is so challenging in all the best ways, and it only has a little bump in the road here with some of the bench locations, because I feel like my favorite part about a lot of games that are difficult with like boss fights, for example, is that when you beat a boss or when you die to a boss, you want to go straight back at it again so you can keep getting those repetitions in and learning those abilities. But some of the fights in Silksong, you're like, oh my god, I gotta run back like a minute or run through like a couple enemies that are gonna hit me, and now it's even more of a pain in the ass to get through this fight because I have to worry about stuff that isn't the fight before the actual boss. And so I don't really love that. I know a lot of people don't also love that. Now, do I think it's like the worst thing ever and makes this game suck and not worth it? No, I don't think it's a deal breaker at all. It definitely, tests your patience a bit, as do a lot of things in this game. However, I think it's well worth it afterwards, but that's definitely probably like major thing that I don't like is some things that just feel like they were there or not there, in the sense of, a bench not being in a location closer to the boss to make it challenging. Also, some other issues is like there are no fast travel spots in a couple locations. So later in the game, for no spoilers, there's one zone that you have to go back for quests, and there's mini games there, and these mini games are really fun, and you can get some items and some upgrades for Hornet, and that's great. The mini games are lovely. I have no complaints with those. They are a pain in the ass, and they took me a long time, but they are well worth it as well. However, to get to that spot, you got to like fast travel to a zone and then run super far to that area, and I'm just like, this area is supposed supposed to be like fun. It has like cool stuff and cool quests here. Why do I have to walk like 5 minutes to get there, and then I go back to another zone for that quest, and then I got to run back to the other area again? I know not everything should be really easy to access, because that is the essence of the world of Farloom, of where you are in the game. But also I'm like, okay, can we kind of just have 1 or 2 more bench locations in the game? I think it would actually save a lot of anger throughout my playthrough. However, on the contrary of that, you do get like a fast travel that you can use anywhere or almost anywhere throughout the game that brings you back to the fast travel bug. And by the end of the game, you can traverse practically anywhere and get anywhere in like a matter of seconds and minutes, so it does definitely get better throughout. Another part that I don't love is that some areas are extremely difficult to find, and that's like good and bad. Good for a lot of people because when you play the game and you find some zones, you're like, okay, let me mark this down where this is on my map or on like a notebook, because I will get an ability 10 hours from now, 20 hours from now, whatever, that I can then access this area. And that happens so many times that you really just can't keep track of all of them unless you literally have like a screenshot in like a notebook next to you, which I didn't do, which I should have done. But it gets to a point where there's so many zones that, once you're 40 hours in, it's hard to realize that, this one little area, if you took a left or broke a wall, it would get maybe this whole like shortcut to another spot. Like, dude, I unlocked a whole shortcut between 2 major areas 50 hours in. And that's not like a bad thing. That's really cool and that's exciting. But there did get to a point where like I was 25 hours into the game and I was like, okay, I know there's still so much I have to do, but where do I go? Because there's an area to the right of me, an area to the left of me, and that's all I know of. And if I go to the right, there's no benches. Shout out BioWater. And to the left, it's an ice zone, Mount Fay. So you walk into the ice zone, and you're like, okay, ice is now surrounding my health bar. And if I'm here for too long, it does damage, and it will kill me. So surely I have to come back and have an item, right? And a lot of games do this, or some games do this, where you'll go to a zone, and it's like a lava zone or like a snow zone, and you're like, all right, so I definitely need like a boots, or I need like a coat for my character to access this area because it's taking damage. And so, you then will go back and you'll find an item and then you'll run back to that zone eventually, like in Zelda, and you'll be good. But Silksong, when I got to Mount Fay, I was like, oh yeah, okay, so this is that scenario. But it wasn't that scenario. You did actually just have to keep exploring and, die once or twice to finally find the little fire circle that would take that ice away from your health bar and reset the counter. And I didn't really love that. I kind of wish there was like something that hinted at going there earlier, or like they should have just gave you an item or had an item somewhere to access it. Maybe that's a me problem, and this is just a really small gripe compared to like the other things that I had to say. But I didn't really love that. And maybe it's like a skill issue, which it probably is. But that's definitely one thing, is like making some areas more visible or more recognizable that you can access them. Because there's plenty of spots in the game where I'm like, okay, clearly I need double jump or like a wall jump for this, and I don't have it yet. So I will remember this and come back later. And that's fine. That's the whole point of exploring. But there's definitely a couple here and there that I can count on my hands you can access. It's just a bit obtuse to get to that area. But beside that, that's most of the cons for the game. Other pros would be like the side quests. There's a wish board, and these side quests are really fun. They help unlock like items and heart containers and abilities and like whole new areas. And even the third act of the game, you have to do wishes to then unlock more main story quests, which I think is cool because all the wishes and side quests are really fun and it adds more to the game, and they don't feel like tedious things to do. Like a JRPG where it's like, hey, go get this item, come back, talk to me, here's XP. Every wish is like, boom, do this thing, then this character is happy and this NPC will help you later on. Or if you find certain fleas around the map, then it will unlock even more different areas around the map. So everything plays a part into the structure of the game and structure of the story very well. But either way, that's really it, man. The game is absolutely phenomenal. Silksong is somehow better than Hollow Knight. It's a game where I think you need to play Hollow Knight, though, to appreciate Silksong in its fullest, because Hollow Knight is an absolutely phenomenal Metroidvania, and this isn't the situation where a sequel comes out, hey, you don't need to play the first game because the sequel is just a better version. This is like, hey, go play Hollow Knight, then go play Silksong, because they're both amazing Metroidvanias, and they just build on each other. And I really do recommend, if you want to play Silksong, if you watch this review to decide if you want to play Silksong, thank you, but also go back and play Hollow Knight, because Hollow Knight is not nearly as difficult as this. And if you enjoy it, you like how the game is played, how it's paced, how you discover things, how the bosses are, then you'll definitely enjoy Silksong because it just builds upon that. But if you play Hollow Knight and you don't really like it, you get lost, take a break from it, come back, maybe give it another shot. It took me 2 or 3 times to get into Hollow Knight. But if you still don't like that, then Silksong just might not be for you. So really, my verdict is play the game, but if you're worried about difficulty, if you've played Hollow Knight and you think it's fun and you really enjoyed it, you can do Silksong, just you're going to have to kind of think a bit more with your brain. And I know that's hard for a lot of people, including me, but you'll get through it. Trust me, there's lots of different guides and also things you can look up. But if you haven't played Hollow Knight or you think Hollow Knight's too difficult, Silksong may not be the way for you, but hey, maybe it is. Give it a shot, get it on Steam, refund it after 2 hours if you don't like it. But I loved it, and beside, some benches being in certain spots that I didn't like, or benches not being in spots, or bosses soaking up a bit more damage here and there, Silksong's absolutely a banger, one of the best Metroidvanias of all time, following the first game as well, and I have nothing but praise for it. I absolutely love it. This is something that you sit and you take in everything, the atmosphere, the gameplay, the adorable NPCs, everything. Sherma, it's a great. Either way, I'm yapping. Have a great rest of your day. Hopefully you enjoyed the review. And yeah, play Silksong. It's really fun.